Good morning and welcome to the National Newspaper Publishers Association's Let It Be Known. And as they say in the trade, thank God it's Friday. It is Friday, March 18th, 2022, and it is the close of Black Press Week, but still just the beginning of the celebration of 195 years of the Black Press of America. This morning we recap Black Press Week and the Black Press's National Issues Forum that all may still see at www.nnpa/events.com or -events.com. Let's start your Friday, though, with some news headlines from the Black Press with James Wright of the Washington Informer. James, good morning.
Good morning. Good to see you, Stacey Brown.
Good to see you, James, as always. James, before we get started on the headlines, prior to going on, you mentioned on Monday, I want to lift that up. That is a special occurrence. Something big is happening on Monday, put it that way. Fill us in.
Yes, very historic. The first African American woman nominated to the U.S. Supreme Court will participate in confirmation hearings before the U.S. Senate Judiciary Committee. And this is historic. I think people need to look in. They need to see just how intelligent that Judge Katani Brown Jackson is, and see who is for her and who is against her, and go after the people who are against her.
Who's against her, James?
Actually, that's a good question. The truth of the matter is that Lindsey Graham has kind of retracted himself somewhat. He initially has come out against her, but now he's kind of retracted on that. Republican Susan Collins of Maine has said that she's leaning toward voting for Judge Jackson, which is a good thing. But no Democrat has come out against her, which is very, very good.
Yeah, we wouldn't expect that. Lindsey Graham and Susan Collins were among the handful of Republicans who voted to confirm her and last year for her current role, and she was two other times she was confirmed with Republican votes. So it shouldn't be a big issue, right, James? Or is it just political?
I think it's just political. I do believe she will get Republican votes. I think they're going to bring up issues such as maybe it's a conflict of interest with her being a member of the Harvard Board of Overseers, because you had that affirmative action case coming up. And there may be some little issues, Stacey, but basically I don't see anything major like you had with Brett Kavanaugh and fooling around and drinking and running around with women the way he did. So you won't see anything like that.
I just love the way you put things, James. And James Wright will be here on Monday for these confirmation hearings. We will bring more about that. And we're going to talk more about the Republicans. You know what, James? They get things done whether we like them or not. They get things done. When they have the will, then they make a way. And so we kind of look for that in Democrats as well, but we certainly see it with Republicans. Perhaps some will disagree, but let's look at some of the headlines, James. A Russian court heading the investigation into Brittany Griner's drug charge extended the American basketball star's detention until May 19th, according to a report by Russian state news agency TASS, with no indication whether she could be released then. The latest news means that Brittany Griner, who is 31 years old, will have spent more than 3 months at least in Russian custody. Griner was arrested on February 17th after Russian officials claimed that they found vape cartridges containing hash oil in her luggage at the airport outside of Moscow, an offense that could carry a sentence of up to 10 years in prison. People are calling Griner a political prisoner, James. He's a 7-time WNBA All-Star. She was returning at the time to Russia, where she plays for the Russian team there, during her Phoenix Mercury off seasons. The Mercury, I should say, who lost to the Chicago Sky in last year's WNBA Finals, are scheduled to open their 2022 season on May 6th, meaning Brittany Griner will not be there.
Well, I hope that all types of diplomacy is taking place between the Biden administration and the Putin administration, even though we're in a terrible, terrible European war. As you know, Stacey, U.S. Representative Colin Allred of Texas and Sheila Jackson Lee of Texas have gotten involved in this. And we hope that this is resolved. But this will be an interesting case to see just how much inertia that the Biden administration has if they can get Brittany home while all of this stuff is happening in Ukraine. If that happens, that will truly be great. We just have to keep our fingers crossed.
Yeah, we will continue to watch that as it unfolds. We did see some video of Brittany last night leaving the court in Moscow, and so we really will continue to keep an eye on that situation. Also in the news this morning, James, Zendaya, Zendaya, her father, Kazime Ajamu, is calling out Hollywood for how the industry has seemingly shunned the Black fathers of successful daughters. He took to Instagram and posted a screenshot of an E! News article that showed a glam shot of his daughter and a direct quote from her. He says, I have standards, which she says, I have standards I don't plan on lowering for anybody, including myself. But then he goes on to say, Black fathers are too often shunned for having successful daughters in Hollywood. He mentioned Matthew Knowles, who we had on the show yesterday, of course, Beyonce's father, King Richard, and himself. He made sure to include Matthew Knowles, who obviously Beyonce and Solange's dad, and of course Serena Williams' dad, Richard, who recently they had a great film that Will Smith just won an award for. King Richard, of course, he talked about them, and he said they never got the respect. They still don't get the respect that others get in Hollywood, talking about Black fathers. James, your thoughts on that?
Yeah, this is something that has been percolating for quite some time. Of course, when a successful celebrity makes it to the top, whether they're male or female, they credit mom. And they rightly should credit mom because mom does a great deal of things for them. However, dads do deserve credit for what they do. And I think that you're right on point on this, because this not only trickles down not from that level, but even on the everyday level, you have single fathers raising families, not nearly as much as single moms, but they don't get the kind of support that the system has set up for moms. And I'm looking. I just want to say this real quick, Stacey. I keep an eye on the Hurt twins. They're Baltimore County kids.
Yep.
And I see how that father, Jerron Hurt, struggles to raise his sons, and he doesn't get the kind of support that maybe the mother, and I don't want to get into that, but maybe the mother would have were she more stable. But so the point is that the man is right. Single fathers, well, not just single fathers, but fathers in general should get more credit for raising their kids.
James, you said, I don't want to get into that. This is called Let It Be Known. So get into it. What's wrong with you?
Well, those of us who know about the Hurt twins, they're going to be 4 on March the 27th. They live in Baltimore County. They're being raised by a single father, Jerron Hurt Sr. The boys, they're twin boys, are Joshua Hurt and Jerron Hurt Jr. And basically, Jerron Sr. is raising them, and he doesn't have an active job, but I don't blame him because the cost of childcare in Baltimore County is absolutely ridiculous, and he has to deal with 2 kids. So he's staying at home like a lot of women do and raising the kids. And he's gotten some flack for some people telling him, well, Jerron Sr., you need to get a job in order to take care of your boys. But
he's like Tommy from Martin, right? You ain't got no job, man.
Yeah. Good point, Stacey. Very good point. He's full time. So, he has posts on Facebook, YouTube, talking about raising the boys. He works very hard in terms of editing the film that goes on Facebook and YouTube. And he's getting a little bit of flack because the mom is not in the life. Her name is Alice. She's not in their life.
Right.
And so as a result, that's just a prime example about the single fathers not getting the kind of support from the system that maybe the mom would get. And so
Mm.
I encourage people just to check that out and do what you think is necessary.
Yeah, interesting story. Thanks for bringing that up, James. Also, this morning it was announced that award-winning filmmakers Stanley Nelson and Jacqueline Olive will direct The Color of Cola, an inspirational documentary that sheds light on the experience of an all-black sales team, the first of its kind for any major corporation, tasked with tapping the African American market in the Jim Crow South. Based on Stephanie Caparel's The Real Pepsi Challenge: How One Pioneering Company Broke Color Barriers in 1940s American Businesses. The documentary will take viewers on a journey marked by persistence and fortitude, according to a press release. The Color of Cola, now in production, will be brought to life by filmmaker and founder of Firelight Films, Stanley Nelson, filmmaker Jacqueline Olive, and executive produced by Viola Davis and her husband, Julius Tenen of Juvie Productions. So we're looking forward to that. That should be really, really interesting, James, to see this story of Pepsi in the 1940s and how they broke color lines and brought in an all-black team.
It's funny we're talking about Pepsi because we're not talking about Coca-Cola. Coca-Cola, which is based in Atlanta, Georgia. Hint, hint. So I think that this is going to be a good historic film, particularly for Black people who are studying business and for entrepreneurs to understand that we didn't always have good sales jobs like that. And as a matter of fact, the many corporations back at that time didn't really see any need to have any special type of Black people in sales because their perception is that Black people don't have any money and Black people are not that important. And if they did have anything, they would just go along with what others are going along with. So this is going to be an interesting film. I'm definitely going to watch it, but it really needs to be watched by a lot of people to get to understand how it was to be a Black consumer back in the 1940s and a Black professional in sales back in the 1940s.
Yeah, absolutely. I would imagine the obstacles, oh gosh, you think about the 1940s and you think about this Black sales team. I'd imagine what they confronted, James. So it's going to be interesting. You're right. I certainly am looking forward to this Viola Davis and Julius Tenen production. So we'll check it out. It's in production, so we'll see. James, it is still Black Press Week. But you know what, James? It is also Black Press Year. 195 years of the Black Press. And yesterday, it really kicked into high gear yesterday as, again, if everyone should go to www.nnpa/events.com to see some great presentations, including William Garth Sr., a philanthropist, community leader, activist, political influencer, and freedom fighter. He earned enshrinement into the Black Press Archives and Gallery of Distinguished Publishers at Howard University's historic Moreland Spingarn Research Center. The guiding force behind the Chicago Citizen newspaper group, Garth joined a host of others enshrined, including Lenora Dahl Carter, Marcus Garvey, Francis Murphy, Dr. Mary Ellen Strong, Charles Tisdale, and M. Paul Red. We can go on and on of those enshrined there. Pluria Marshall, the NNPA Fund Chair, introduced the segment on behalf of the NNPA Fund. He said, we pause in sacred remembrance and tribute to the life, legacy, and memory of publisher William Bill Garth Sr. James, what a tribute to William Garth, who passed away in 2016 at the age of 79. It really shows, James, the magnitude of the Black Press. 195 years and still going strong.
Yes, and I also like to mention, you mentioned one of my transformative mentors who has been enshrined there. That's Francis Murphy of the Afro-American newspaper. I also like to mention that Dr. Calvin Rolock of the Washington Informer is also enshrined there also. It's interesting about Mr. Garth's paper. I had a friend of mine tell me that in Chicago, if you want to read about black news, you read the Chicago Defender. But if you really want to know what's really going on in Chicago, you read the Citizen. And so I think he made great contributions by reaching the grassroots level of that big, huge city with its big, huge black community and talking about the various issues that are going on in Chicago. There is not just one black Chicago. You have a lot of different groups, neighborhoods in Chicago. It is a very diverse place in terms of black people. And the Citizen did a very good job doing that on the neighborhood level. And all praise is due to him for excellent work.
Yeah, and James, so let me ask you. You obviously have done a lot of good work with the Black Press. How long have you been with the Black Press?
Well, I started with the Black Press in October of 1991 at the Washington Afro American. I was a sports stringer. And in April of 1993, I was moved up to a Capitol Hill reporter. And I also covered sports on the side. And this was when Bill Clinton was president. This is when the number of Congressional Black Caucus members like jumped exponentially because of redistricting and the Voting Rights Act. And this was a very exciting time. I served as the Capitol Hill reporter from 1993 basically until 2000. I would like to add, while I was working that job, I had a chance to travel to Libya when I shouldn't have been. I had a
You
chance
shouldn't
to
have been.
travel to England. I had a chance to travel to Rome. I had a chance to travel to South Africa, as well as cover the presidential inauguration in 1996. Matter of fact, I had a front row in President Clinton being sworn in for a second term in terms of the press. And it was a wonderful, wonderful experience. When I write my autobiography, Stacey, I'm going to say those were my second golden years in
Your
1993.
second golden years.
Second
Okay.
golden years.
I got you. But James, the Black Press, we cover so much, have covered so much.
Mm-hmm.
We've talked about politics, things. How are things today? We it's so much confronting us. Speaking from the political side, of course, Dr. Chavis often talks about, and understandably so, the voting rights situation that's going on. We have all this voter suppression, and really, you think about when we think about Dr. Chavis and folks of his ilk, we still have a civil rights struggle. What is going on today that we have highlighted in the Black Press and continue to highlight in the Black Press that is unresolved that we need to make sure we keep an eye on?
Well, the thing we have to do is that we have to continue to be engaged. I remember when President Obama was sworn in, a lot of black people, not people like you and me, Stacey, but people like you and I who are
The different
engaged.
black folks, huh?
Yeah, yeah.
Y'all a
People were
special kind
like,
of Negro.
yeah. Well, some black folks will just say, hey, we got a black president. Everything is all right. We don't have to stay engaged. We don't have to vote as much. And they understand us now. But apparently that wasn't the case in 2016. When Donald Trump somehow became president, and now we have all this hatred, this voter suppression, and what it is really is that we didn't continue to engage at the level that we should have, and Dr. Chavis says this all the time. We have to continue to engage. We have to continue to vote. We have to continue to go out and get our neighbors to the polls. Those sort of things. That's basically what's happening. You're having all these voter suppression laws is because a lot of people of color before 2020 did not vote at the level that they should have.
Okay,
Had
but James,
those,
let me interject. You're talking about people of color and voting, and not last year, but during the election of 2020, Ice Cube talked about this contract for Black America, right? He was basically blasted out of his shoes for it, saying that he had no right, et cetera, et cetera. Now, when we look back on it, James, there are more people saying, wait a minute, perhaps we should have listened, because black folks, black voters, let me put it that way, black voters tend to, for the most part, automatically vote Democratic. Is that a problem, James?
I okay, I'm in the minority on this, but I do believe that it's a problem. I believe that it's a problem is because when the other party is in power, they get to ignore us because of political implications. Let's look at our friends in the Jewish community. You have a significant Jewish bloc in the Democrats. You have a measurable block of Jews in the Republican Party. No matter what party is in power, Stacey, the Jewish agenda is addressed and dealt with. That is not the case with us. So we need to be in both parties. And let me say this real quick. I'm not so sure, given the way America is set up politically, that a third party would work at this time, as has been talked about in the past.
James, I've had publishers in the National Newspaper Publishers Association's family say to me as recently as last week, say, look, the Republican Party is doing heavy advertising with me. Democrats are doing very little, if any. Is that a sign to, because we are the Black press, 195 years, no other organization can really boast that. I mean, how many organizations can boast 195 years? And you know, it's not just we're just existing, James. We have a great impact. So
Yes.
when you hear publishers in the Black press say, you know, and it's not just about the advertising dollars, what they're saying, just the respect that they're being accorded, or the respect that they're not getting, the lack of respect, if you will, because Democrats as a whole, as a party, seems to take the Black vote for granted. So therefore, they don't call the Houston Forward Times, or they don't call the Washington Informer or the Baltimore Times when it's campaign time, for the most part, right?
Yes.
But they will call, you know, the Democrats will call on the Washington Post, they will call on the New York
Oh,
Times or CNN.
yeah.
But they're courting the Black vote. How are you courting the Black vote? The Republicans are having all out. So I get emails, James, constantly from the Republican Party. They are courting the Black vote, and some of our publishers are saying they're advertising with us. Are they just taking it for granted? I guess it comes back to that. The
Well,
Democrats.
I have to agree with you, Stacey. The Democrats are taking it for granted because they know, quote, they know that we're going to vote their way. The problem I see with that is that they think that's going to last forever. That's not going to last forever. And the Democrats put up the fact, well, we have Barack Obama and we have Vice President Harris, and that is great, great, great. But at the end of the day, the name of the game is money. And let me say this about the Republican Party. The Republican Party, really, tell you the truth, could have a strong Black constituency, because a lot of the social issues, a lot of Black people agree with them on the social issues, particularly when it comes to abortion, and particularly maybe comes to capital punishment, even economic development in terms of tax credits for Black businesses. But where the Republican Party falls down with is in civil and human rights. If the Republican Party could become more moderate, notice I didn't say liberal, moderate in terms of civil and human rights, they would probably have more traction in the Black community and the Black press.
Well, before we move forward, I just wanted to make sure to lift up Al McFarlane of Insight News. He talks about Bill Garth, as we spoke about earlier, who was enshrined yesterday. He says, Bill Garth and I created Midwest Black Publishers Coalition to secure ad contracts for regional Black newspapers. We traveled to Ghana together to support promotion of Panafest 99. Bill was a royal. Al McFarlane says Al is also quoted in our NPA Newswire story this morning about Bill Garth. And Bobby Henry, Celeste Hart says, my good friend, may he rest in peace. He taught me so much. And then to our conversation now, James, Bobby Henry of the West Side Gazette says the Black press has been taken for granted, and it's a shame that if something were to happen to the Black press, to make them realize just how important the Black press is. And isn't that, you know, that's always the case, right? You don't know what you got until it's gone.
Yes.
But the Black press, we hope that there's at least another 195 years, right, to go. But
Mm-hmm.
it just goes back to our point. We just seem to our readers seem to receive a lot of information about the Congressional Black Caucus, about
Mm-hmm.
the Senate, about the president and vice president. As you pointed out that the fact that the vice president happens to be African American, it only takes you so far if action is not behind it, right?
Right, right. And that's what the Democratic Party needs to do. Yes, Jamie Harrison, the DNC chair, he's a great guy. He means well, but he has to do more for Black people and more for Black Democrats. And there's nothing wrong with that, Stacey Brown. This is what a lot of people were saying when President Obama was in office. He didn't do enough for Black people. He did enough for everybody else, and he didn't want to come across as being the Black president. Well, that's not what the issue is.
Isn't he black?
Yeah, yeah, I mean, but that wasn't what the issue is. And so I think that what you've been saying and what a lot of members of the Black press, such as myself and the publishers, are saying, more support needs to take place for the Black press. I mean, those are our tax dollars. And then the Black spending in this country is in the trillions. So therefore, we need more respect and we need more money.
So Al McFarland raises an interesting dilemma. He says in Minnesota, Republicans are totally dismissive of Black media and sadly of Black interests. He says Democrats spend, but not without a massive fight that we take to them. They engage because we go hard, and Al goes hard. So
Mm-hmm.
but see, that's just it, right? Okay, so that's one segment. Okay, and that's in that sense. Okay, Republicans have not engaged in Black interests at all, Black media or Black interests. But he's saying that Democrats, they do spend, but you have to go banging down their doors
Yes.
to do that, and they engage because they go. Why is it that Al McFarland has to bang down the doors of the Democrats in Minnesota? That should not happen. They should be banging down Al's door, right?
Right, right, right. Particularly since the African American vote in Minnesota is often the margin of victory, particularly in congressional races and sometimes in statewide races in that state. Al shouldn't have to go to the Minnesota Democratic Party and beg and argue and fuss and
I'm
cuss
sure Al's
in
not
order to.
begging though. Al's coming with the
Well, okay,
sledgehammer.
okay. Some of us do beg, but fuss and cuss in terms of getting the money because it's the constituency there, the desire is there, the push is there. He shouldn't have to do that. And I find it interesting that in Minnesota, the Republican Party ignores the Black vote there because they do so at their own peril.
Yeah, I was in Florida, and publishers in Florida, not named Bobby Henry, said, and it's interesting. They said that the Republicans spend with them, right? And yet Florida, we know, is Republican controlled, and so that speaks to something else. That okay, we are not only getting Black support, but we are courting even more Black support. And shouldn't that be the mindset of Democrats, if not only if to offset the Republican advances? Because the Black support polls have shown, if we believe polls, of course, left up to interpretation, polls have shown that since last year, the Black engagement with Republicans has only grown.
It's interesting you talk about Florida because Byron Donalds, who represents basically the Naples area of Florida, he is an African American Republican and he's a Trump loving Republican. He's not a Rockefeller Republican. He's a Trump Republican. And so that just shows you how that party in that state is recruiting Black people in order to be active in that process. Now, of course, Florida has 2 or 3 Black Democrats. But the question becomes, what are they doing for those Democrats in terms of promoting them for further offices? We hope to have positive results with Val Demings as she runs for the U.S. Senate, and that would be a very good thing for she to get that position. But the Democratic Party has got to get behind Black people in that particular state, in all states, but in that state in particular, because that's where the growth is.
Well, Here's an interesting tidbit, James, that really, to me, sums it all up. Everybody that advertised in the Cincinnati Herald in Cincinnati, Ohio, won their race.
Mm-hmm.
Everybody. The
Mm-hmm.
black press remains as relevant, as strong, and as influential as ever.
Yes.
195 years ago, our founders said we wish to plead our own cause, and certainly we are still doing that. And heck, support us, and we'll plead yours too. There
That's
you
right.
go.
That's
How
right.
about
That's
that?
right.
But
That's
thank
right.
you so much, James. We can talk. I know you can talk politics, forever. Mr. Historian himself. We appreciate you, James, and we actually, James, we're going to see you on Monday because, as you brought out earlier, Judge Ketanji Brown Jackson, the hearings begin, and we're going to bring it to our listeners, our viewers, and our readers. Thanks for joining the Black Press of America. Celebrate with us all year long. 195 years. Think about that. That's quite the milestone. Everybody, be safe. Have a great weekend, and we'll see you on Monday.